Howdy, my dudes. Today we are talking about Ju-on the Grudge and The Grudge and The Grudge, the Untold chapter. Yes, I'm going to talk about every single goddamn Ju-on film that I own. The only ones I'm not talking about, at least in this video, will be Ju-on the Beginning of the End, Ju-on the Final Curse, and Kayako vs. Sadako, which I have on my watch later list on YouTube because it's up on YouTube. I don't know if it has English subtitles, so yeah. But I do also plan to completely deep dive into my Arrow video, The Ring set, which comes with the 3 Ring films plus Spiral, and I also have the 3 American Ring films, the Gore Verbinski one, the sequel, and Rings. Yeah, I do like the Ring film, and I do like the Gore Verbinski one, so I'm more excited to watch those than I have been for these. But of course, let's talk about these in chronological order. I'm going to grab out my, well, not chronological order, I'm going to talk about the Japanese films first, from Ju-on the Curse to Ju-on the Curse 2, Ju-on the Grudge, Ju-on the Grudge 2, and Ju-on White Ghost and Ju-on Black Ghost. And then I will be covering the American set, The Grudge 2, The Grudge 3, and The Grudge, the Untold chapter, which is also just called The Grudge 2020. I prefer the Untold chapter because it actually does play alongside the original film. It has no impact at all, obviously. It doesn't even really reference it, vaguely does, just to be like, oh, remember that story from, like, 16 years ago? Oh, here we are. It's not even set in 2020. Or 2019, it's just set in 2004 and 2006. It's very weird. Anyway, we'll cover that last. So this will be a deep dive into the series, what my thoughts are on all the films, I guess what my thoughts are on the transfers, but realistically, it's only going to be a review for the Arrow video ones, given that the other 3 are DVD releases, except for The Grudge 2019, which is a modern Blu-ray. It looks fine. Sounds pretty good, but yeah. Let's dive into it, shall we? In my Ju-on ranks. First off, I will actually start with mentioning In a Corner and 4444444444. Both released in 98. They were, well, made in 98 at least. They were short films by the director Takashi Shimizu. Both of them are about 3 minutes long, and there's not much else to mention. Well, In a Corner is like 4 minutes long. They basically introduce Kayako, who is the murdered woman, and her son Toshio. Or Toshio! He's cute. Anyway, I watched those 2. I thought they're alright. You can find them on YouTube. It's pretty simple to watch them. In fact, just chuck on YouTube, look up In a Corner, look up 44444444, and there you go. They seem pretty much like student films, which is fair enough. They're not overtly scary, but if you do watch Ju-on the Curse and Ju-on the Curse 2, or at least Ju-on the Curse, the first one, there are details that actually connect back to these 2 shorts. So basically there are 2 characters, not played by the same actors, but there are characters in the 2 shorts that do feature in the film. Which is kind of cool, you know? It's like, hey, I've kind of already established a story, what if I tied them all in? Yeah, real film nerd stuff. Trust me, I've done the same, it's fine. So, we start with those 2. I think they're pretty good. I mean, for what they are, they're fine. Short films, little spooks, easy stuff, decent effects. I don't know, it is what it is. Then we jump to Ju-on the Curse from 2000. I gave this 3.5 stars out of 5. I rank all of my films out of 5 and put them on Letterboxd. You can check my Letterboxd down in the description. There's a list for all these films. Yeah, I was really kind of impressed to some degree by this film. I know I only gave it 3.5, but it's not the most impressive story, but it did have a great atmosphere, and I did purposely make sure that for the majority of these films, I watched them in this room when no one else was home to get the best experience of, like, it's not dark and at night and creepy because I live with people. They're going to come home from work and make noise at dark nighttime when they're home from work. That's the nature of reality. So I had a good 2-hour block for a couple of days over a 2-week period to watch all these films. It is what it is. Except for like the second or third Grudge film. By the time I was watching the third Grudge film, I had John Denver in the next room, and I'm like, I don't fucking care. I'm watching this shit. I gotta get it over and done with. So, Hot Damned is Japanese horror just hit differently. It's purely atmospheric, and even the biggest scare moments are accentuated by over-the-top sound effects or score beats. It's just a simple welcome to this world that is pure and terrifying, and you'll regret your stay. But this was a nice first entry to properly introduce me to the Ju-On without being a scary movie joke. So yeah, it's pretty simple as that. I like the transfer. I mean, again, it's a HD transfer of a basically standard definition film. It's direct to DVD. That was basically how the first film worked. I actually watched it with the introduction by the director. Both of them, I believe, have introductions by an actor as well. All of these films have an introduction, except for White Ghost. Black Ghost has an introduction by its director. White Ghost does not have an introduction at all. So, it's just nice stuff, you know? It's great because it's a... Shimizu actually does the introductions, so I watched those ones as prerogative. He introduced the first one saying that this was the first film that they actually made. They had the budget for it because their friend Kurosawa was, had a production company, so they were able to get this film done. And yeah, it's 4x3, but I kind of like the style of it. The visual style is really nice. The effects work is all practical, which is really cool. It's really creepy. I just found a great atmosphere to it. I thought it was really creepy. I liked the story as well. Like, it seemed low budget, but it had this nice feel to it. And it's non-linear as well, which is a strong suit in all these films, where all except for the third Grudge film are non-linear in story, which the Americans don't like that, but I really liked it. I liked how it gave you different scares at different times. It built up the mystery throughout it, because it wasn't just, here's a person, now they're dead, cut to the next person. It would jump in between. Sometimes your chapter with a person, which would start with their name, would end with that person dying, and then you'd see them in a later chapter, and you get more, character and understand who they are more, and what led them to the house, what led them to being cursed. Because obviously the basic premise for the Ju-On films is that a violent, murder happens in a house. A husband kills his wife and kills his son and kills their cat. And the son merges with the cat in spirit form. Basically he meows, simple as that. And the wife becomes a haunted ghost. And anyone who steps inside the house basically gets cursed. It's simple as that. That's the whole idea of the Ju-On. A curse that is so powerful, it's, a hateful act that is so powerful that it causes a curse. They explain at the start of every goddamn film. It gets a little tiresome, but you get the point. So, yeah, I'm not going to explain the plot of any of these films. Most of the plot is basically the same. The Ju-On, the Curse 1 and Curse 2, where I will dive into the Curse 2. The main plot of it does feature again in Ju-On the Grudge, The Grudge, and The Grudge 2. There were elements in the first two Curse films, both in terms of narrative and all these kind of, from jump scares to story beats to horror moments, are all replicated in all of the sequels and remakes and all that kind of stuff. It's my main criticism of the series, but we'll get to that. So for the most part, I like Ju-On the Curse. It's 70 minutes long, easy film to watch, and nicely creepy. It's still low budget, but it has a great feel to it. I like the aspect ratio. It kind of creeps the film out a bit more, I don't know, by tightening it a little. And it could still use some improvements, but at the main point, I enjoyed it. Then we move on to, in chronological release, Ju-On the Curse 2. I didn't like this one as much. It starts with an introduction, again, by the director, and he basically says, because these were two direct-to-DVD films that they filmed within like a 9-day period, the second half of this film, they didn't really know what to do with the footage, so they just... Well, it's not like they didn't, but they didn't know how to... They didn't have the budget to put it all in one disc kind of thing, as in like the DVD didn't have the capability of being over like 70 minutes. I don't know, I'm bullshitting right now. But for the most part, this film is basically 45 minutes of new footage that continues the previous film, and about 35 to 25 minutes of film that is literally just highlights from the first film. It's like, hey, if you didn't catch the narrative part, here's the narrative part with the teacher. And then here are some other jump scares, and now let's continue the story. So he does say in the introduction, if you're okay with watching the same footage, The first 25 minutes are the exact same stuff you've seen in the previous film. It's not remade, it's literally the same footage. The rest of the film carries on from the exact ending of the previous film, which I thought was a great ending for the first film. It sets up something really, well, not really sets up, it's got a creepy ending. But then this one was like, hey, you know that scene? We didn't actually call cut there, we kept filming. Here's the rest of the story. And then the rest of the story focuses on like a few people that are left, which is fine. I only gave it 2.5 stars because, again, the first half is not great. It's not a very long film either. It's 76 minutes. When 25 to 30 minutes of that is footage you've seen in the previous film, you've only got like a 40-minute film. You really don't need that. There is a supercut on YouTube, apparently, that some people have logged as their reviews for this film, which just cuts out the part that you've already seen and just continues it. I believe it's all on YouTube. I haven't watched it because I have the Blu-rays. Why would I watch a supercut on YouTube? But my recommendation, if you do not have this set, check that out instead. If you do have this set, skip the first 25 minutes. Trust me, it is worth it. Just skip it. Just skip it to something that you haven't seen before. It's fine. It's okay. If you skip past what you've already seen, the rest of the film is pretty interesting. I don't think it has the impact of the first film, but there's some nice extra world building and interesting sequences. The scene at the police station was kind of funny, how Kayako just wanders around. Yeah, a lot of people will talk about this one saying it's a great scene at a school, which is a really interesting scene, but it kind of flies majorly under the radar when you realize that of all the things they adapted from these two films, from The Curse 1 and The Curse 2, they did not adapt any of it for any of the other films. Like, this is the only part that's basically restricted to just this film, outside of the story with this property seller, whatever the hell they're called. The person who sold the house, that's who continues the story in the second film. Yeah, basically, when I got to watching the next film, which I guess we'll just jump straight into, of course, Ju-on the Grudge, the introduction features the director talking about how when they had done the first two films, again, direct-to-DVD, the second one became really, really popular because some people had heard about, word of mouth about the first one, but then when the second one came out, people really wanted it. So the DVD sales skyrocketed because so many people wanted it. Even people internationally wanted it. So Americans heard about it, probably Sam Raimi, I wonder why, and a few other people, and they were like, hey, we want to make an American reboot. But the director said, no, I want to make a feature-length film first, and we'll go from there. So basically he created Ju-on the Grudge. Now, Ju-on the Grudge is probably, 90-odd minutes? 92 minutes, released in 2002. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't give it a like. I thought it was alright. And I guess I could just read my review, because realistically, here we go. Maybe it's because I watched Ju-on the Curse before watching this, but honestly, this didn't do it for me. Though the bigger budget has clearly allowed for improved effects, some dated by today's perspective, I feel it wasn't the effects that let it down, nor the repeated story elements from the original 2 films. I feel like there was some real horror missing from this, a tension that just doesn't click with me as well as it did with Curse. The biggest problem I had was with Kayako, who, despite being played by the same actress from Curse, wasn't as terrifying this time around. She plays Kayako for the majority of the films, including the American ones, like the first 2 American ones, which is really interesting. She's not in the third. Kayako's in the third one, but it's a different actress. The kid was fine, probably better than the kid from the previous films, but yeah, there was just something off about how they showed Kayako. It's just bizarre to me, given it's the same actress and director, and the improved budget allows for better effects, but she just wasn't as scary. However, the effects may be at fault, given she was teased as a ghostly figure with using special effects, rather than just having her be in makeup, like they did in Curse and the second half of this film. I will mention, of course, because this was remade into The Grudge, there's this great featurette on the DVD, which is like 45 minutes long, shows behind the scenes. Turns out, a lot of these films are practical. Even what looks like a digital effect, there are still digital effects, they still had a basis that was practical. And by practical, I mean they basically dress up the woman in complete black. And it's kind of creepy, like when you see her just in pure black, but the way they did it in the film doesn't look good. Like, she looks like a shadowy figure, so they've obviously added effects to it to make her look like a shadowy figure for, like, 2 scenes, and I really did not like that. I'm like, especially because, and I really got to emphasize this, I like Kayako in a natural form. I like when she's just on the ground, being all fucking hellbent, creepy, bones going everywhere kind of bullshit, coming down the stairs, making weird noises. She wants to fucking rip your guts out. It's great, or just scare you to death. Depends on how much budget they have. It gets to the point, though, where narratively, because of course these films are non-linear, and the Grudge, Ju and the Grudge and the Grudge did the exact same film because they're do the exact same thing because they're basically the exact same film, where they show Kayako as this figure, but then by the end of the film she's, just a girl. And I think that makes it goofier. Especially because when you think about it, if you look at this from a linear narrative point of view, why the fuck is she some kind of weird black spirity ghost thing? There's no reason for it, because technically in the reality of the timeline, you've seen her as both normal ghost and then normal ghost at the end, and in the middle she just decides to become some kind of goofy spirit thing. I don't understand it. I guess they thought it would be creepier because they had the budget for it, but I don't like it. I don't like it in either version, even if I think the effects are improved in the American version. I just don't like it at all. Yeah, so there's no reason outside of building her up as a big deal as to why they just don't have her be there and not, reveal her face or anything until later in the film, much like the Ringu films where Sadako's big reveal is her face rather than just her body and her hair, because it's the face that scares you the most, realistically. I do think the story was improved upon this time around, but I go back and forth as to which I prefer. The Grudge feels more refined, but the Curse feels messier, but a lot of butts here, with more connective tissue. So I like the teacher story in Curse, which is replicated again in a later film, a later American film, I think. Is it the Curse? Is it the Grudge film, the American one? I can't remember. There are so many. These films are all the same. I really got to emphasize that. They're all the fucking same. But I like the story that they emphasize in the Curse film. I don't like the story as much in The Grudge. It's not as interesting to me. I like the teacher stuff is in The Grudge film. It's not really the teacher stuff. It's the reason why Kayako dies, which in The Grudge, in The Curse and The Grudge, as in the American Grudge, it's to do with school and a teacher. But I like that part of the story. It's the more interesting part of the story. The way they unravel it and deal with it in the Curse film, in the American Grudge film, kind of weird, a little logical, but okay. But I like how they do it in Curse. That's why I feel like Curse is the best one. Almost the best one. Yeah, the film doesn't present as much sympathy for Kayako despite the opening death scene, which really unnecessarily gratuitous death scene at the start of the film, which in The Grudge they leave for the end of the film as a flashback, which I kind of like. So I feel like it boils down to the teacher subplot and how that drove the story from conception to finality, but this film doesn't do that, rather focusing on a different main plot, but having similar enough anthology stories intertwined. The film doesn't produce this. The end reveal doesn't really add much to the film itself, and I'm trying to ignore how I already know the story from the previous films. This film doesn't showcase much mystery surrounding who Kayako is, but the first film emphasizes the mystery through its connection with the teacher, as in Curse, which this film basically avoids, making Kayako a force first rather than a characterized and mysterious force. Instead of making her a person who became a force, it's just, hey, she's an evil force, and then she's a person. Technically, they do emphasize that she was murdered, and then it's like, now she's an evil force. But again, emphasis on the evil force before emphasizing on her as a person. She's still mysterious in this one, but not as scary. So yeah, not much I can mention about it. I feel like to some degree it being, wider screen because it's cinematic, I feel like that kind of takes away from it a bit. Like someone mentioned in one of the reviews how they preferred the voyeuristic take of the 4x3 of the original Japanese ones, and I kind of like that too. I think the lower effect makes it a bit more interesting. Obviously, this is a time period where 4x3 for a cinematic release is not common in the early 2000s, which is fair enough, but I don't know. I don't feel like they did anything amazing with it, except for some of those shots where you'll have the person on this side, like, "Hi, I am main character." Oh, look, in the background, there's Kayako being weird. They do stuff like that, but I feel like there's too much space. You know how I was recently talking about The Wire in one of my videos because I got the DVD set. And I got the DVD set with the 4x3 because it closes it in. It makes it feel cramped and tighter and more claustrophobic. But when you open the screen up to have the full widescreen, suddenly having a villain all the way at the other side of the screen is not as compelling when they could be right here. But you get what I mean. It has a different feel to it on a subconscious level, though a lot of people would complain, "I don't like having black bars on my TV." Well, then stop fucking watching TV. Anyway, what is the next film? The next film, though not in actually, is the next film in chronological release? Yeah, it is. Like, I forgot that they did the American Grudge film after doing The Grudge 2. The Grudge 2, baby! I gave this one 4 stars. This one actually is my favourite. Now, I should still mention, didn't scare me as much as Curse. Curse has I love the atmosphere and it scares me to death. Grudge 2, not so much, but I really like the effects and the story. So let's dive into it. This one honestly surprised me a lot. While scaring me in different ways, not similar enough to Curse, but different enough. I feel like, again, you watch the same thing over and over and over again. Are you going to be scared by it? I don't know. Probably not. It's so mysterious of a film that even when the main story has basically wrapped, it continues in this otherworldly realm for the last 30 minutes. I think that if not for its better usage of effects and its focus on a compelling victim, Kyoto, really? That's her name? Yes, her name. No, Kyoko, you idiot. God, me and my, that was probably autocorrect. Kyoko. Anyway, Kyoko. Now it looks weird because there's so many K's in it. No, that's the right word. It's Kyoko. Anyway, this could have been a rerun of basically what we've seen before. So basically they're like, hey, what if we just completely change the story because it's a new film? They do have elements that still come back from the Curse films, which I don't mind. But for the most part, it's something new and fresh. It's a different take. It's still people going to this house get cursed. But the general premise is still there, but the end-all be-all is an interesting expansion. Instead, it gives a cliche reason for our victims to be affected by the curse. You know, oh, teens bully their friend into going into the house. Oh, it's a film crew who want to talk about a paranormal place. Cliches and stuff that's been done before. Sometimes annoyingly, sometimes not. If you've watched Halloween Resurrection, similar, but not completely. I was expecting that. Luckily, it wasn't. But at the same time, I like that film, so I guess we're in odds and ends. Yes, instead it gives us a cliche reason for our new victims to be affected by the curse, but in doing so it gives us terrifying deaths, whether cheekily foreshadowed or not. Like the flooding on the wall and stuff like that. It's good. With some great imagery and even a visual motif, that of the stain. Like they genuinely make the Kayako into a stain, and I kind of like that, because the effects that they do for it, only one effect looks a bit off, but for the most part, it's like a black stain on the ground, and her head just slowly comes out of it. Imagine me with really long black hair coming out of the floor. That's kind of creepy, isn't it? Anyway, Kayako was presented in a more visually unique way, rather than how she was slowly teased in the previous film. She's never really a special effect outside of the one part where she climbs out of the floor, but that seemed like it was the only way to pull off the shot. It's got the kind of visual noise around it where it's like, this is probably a green screen element, but that's fine. However, they do utilize special effects to amplify her presence, like her exaggerated hair. I do like that. There are some American films that really are just like, hey, this hair is the scary part, and like, no, it's not. The hair is not the scary part. The hair is just an attribute, like Davy Jones. His tentacles aren't the scary part, they're just an attribute. They just make him creepier because it makes him look more like a fucking octopus, because he is. Anyway, I also love the sound design, so varied and creepy. My main props for this series, sound design is phenomenal. There's a whole segment with a character who's basically irrelevant to the main plot, yet carries over from the previous film. But because she is only now being affected by the curse, she can see other things that people can't, and she ultimately experiences the worst of it. She's a character who was in the previous film, who I'd forgotten about, because she's so minor that it's like her friend who gets cursed and she ends up becoming cursed, and she has like one of the most interesting character deaths in the whole series, if not probably the most interesting character death in the whole entire Grudge series. Her whole segment is almost set in two different realities that I can only vaguely wrap my head around, but I do like this as it adds to the style of the film and gives a surreal Nightmare on Elm Street feel that the previous films don't have. Shimizu utilizes our pregnant protagonist to do something I didn't expect him to do, which is, as a result, is basically his conclusion to Kayako's story, given he never made a Ju-on film after this, as in like a Ju-on film, not a Grudge film. Even the ending, which could be explicitly giving Kayako a happy ending, doesn't seem to do so, instead giving a new life a terrifying perspective. I honestly don't want to spoil the ending, and I don't do I actually say it in this? But I imagine someone reading this already has seen the film. If not, check it out. It's crazy. I don't really have much else to add, but I really appreciate the different approach that was taken on this film. It could have been a cheap by-the-numbers sequel, which at times it feels like, but given its stronger narrative ties with the protagonist and its heightened imagery, I really like this film. I do think the first Curse film was more terrifying, almost by default, as it was the first Grudge film I'd seen, but I like how the Grudge 2 doesn't forget its roots and goes hard on the crazy visual stuff like in the Curse 2. There you go, folks. I will note, transfer-wise, these all look pretty good. The 4K of The Grudge, Ju-on The Grudge, which is the one I watched, because it has a Dolby Vision and everything, it looks good. I mean, I wouldn't write home about it, but I'm like, it's a decent transfer, you know? It's pretty good. Probably didn't need it in HDR, but sure, I guess. It's one of those things where you highlight the one film that has like gives a HDR gradient, and everyone else is like, why didn't you do that with the rest of them? I don't know. It looks fine. I didn't really notice as much of a dramatic impact, but of course this is in contrast to the direct-to-DVD original film, so there was a dramatic, increase from those. Obviously, that was bound to happen. Nevertheless, let's jump into the last two Grudge films that are Japanese. So we've got Ju-on White Ghost, which I gave 2.5 stars. This was partnered with Ju-on Black Ghost. Again, the director introduced it, basically saying how for the 10th anniversary of the original two shorts, they wanted to just create some new stories that could potentially be in the same universe. They vaguely reference each other, and they vaguely reference the original film. It doesn't have anything to do with Kayako. She's not in this. The kid, though, is. Toshio is actually in both of these two. He makes cameos just for one scene each. I like his cameo in White Ghost because he's like meowing at an electronic dog, and I kind of think that was cute. However, I don't really care much for his cameo in Black Ghost. He's just kind of sitting there. That's about it. I'm not going to give too much detail about these because they're both an hour each, which is a benefit and a weakness because it's beneficial because it's short and sweet, but it's also not that great. The benefit of the Ju-on films is that they're short and usually kind of okay. White Ghost is a nice, clean slate for the franchise whilst keeping its traditional narrative pattern, the mixed order of events, and the usually brutal reveal in one of the later segments, but giving us new characters and a new ghostly villain. Though I don't think the ghosts in this were as terrifying as Kayako and Toshio, who makes a cute cameo, I did like the style that they were presented in. Except the basketball, which was too obscure and just seemed like it was there to be either a distinguishing visual or a way to distract from the mask that the ghost was wearing because it's so low budget. There are some fun effects and a nice selection of different sequences, but ultimately the film lacks that one character who the film kind of focuses itself around. This is the main fault of these films, where they go for scares over us caring about a particular person, yet the original Curse and Grudge 2 are able to achieve this in a similar runtime. So overall, White Ghost doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's a fun hour of ghostly spooks, and like 15 minutes of a particular uncle that I would not like to interact with. Maybe there was a reason we never saw what happened to Kayako and her son before they died. Which they do end up actually showing in a lot of the later films. It's a bit, well, I guess in the earlier films, realistically, just the American films. Yeah, there's a really graphic fucking scene towards the end of this that reveals what happened, and I don't like it. It's really fucked up. Implication for implication, sure, but this is an implication. This is, explicit. So, yeah, it's like the last 10 minutes of the film. It's just like gnarly. It's like not a, oh wow, what an interesting reveal. It's, oh god, why, turn it off. So, Ju-on Black Ghost from 2009. This one I will note who it's directed by, Mari Asato, or Mari Asato. The previous one was directed by... Ju-on White Ghost was directed by Ryuta Miyake. So, Black Ghost, I gave it 3 stars. What if Malignant was a Japanese ghost film? Spoilers. Black Ghost has a stronger narrative and mystery, which I really enjoyed, and its scares were nicely built too, but always fell flat when they cut to the ghost's face. They keep doing that. They have this great imagery. There's this one great shot of like this dark alleyway, like pitch black, and then like this blackened figure comes out, and it's like, it's genuinely terrifying. And then they just cut to a close-up of the ghost, and I'm like, why are you doing that? It just looks like a dodgy visual effect. Why are you doing that? You're ruining the film. So every time they have a great scare like that, they ruin it by doing a close-up. It's dumb. They really shouldn't have done that. It's ultimately a ghost version of Malignant, which I still really liked, but the last 10 minutes didn't really convince me. I think it's implying that you know what? I'm not going to talk about the plot. I didn't care much for the last 10 minutes. It tries to explain how the person becomes a ghost, and it's kind of dumb. Which is ironic because it's still the Malignant stuff. The rest of the film is fine. Definitely the better of the 2 anniversary films, though, where White Ghost has better effects work. Effects work. Anyway, and scares. Better effects, better scares. Black Ghost has a better atmosphere and story. I really like these films when they actually have a focal point, when they actually have someone who is a main character that you focus through the whole time. I know the American films are bound to have that anyway because they're American films, but I do like them when they do. I don't mind cutting to another person who will serve some kind of point in a narrative, whether they're just a person who stumbles into the house because they were dared to or whatever. I don't mind that. Give us a brief, vague setup of them and you watch them die. It's usually just for the scares. You don't always have to care about them, but it doesn't hurt. But I do like when they actually give us narrative to the main character, that there is someone who we are caring about who has an interaction with the main plot. I like that about them. I like that about Ju-on the Curse, the teacher. I like that about Ju-on the Grudge 2, the pregnant woman, and even the Grudge, the American one. Not the teacher part. That's just for good characterization of Kayako. But you have Sarah Michelle Gellar's character. But I don't really think it's worth mentioning the American films to some degree, because they all have a main character. So basically does what I wanted the Japanese films to do, but their characters in the American ones are not very good. But yeah, that's the whole Japanese set. The Arrow video set as an overall, really good. The transfers are really nice. The special features are pretty good for what they have. I think as my overall ranking for the Japanese films, Ju-on the Grudge 2 is my favourite of them, followed by The Curse, then followed by Ju-on the Grudge, because even though it's basically a remake of... It is a remake of The Curse, I still liked it. It's not bad, but it's just not very scary for me. Following that is Ju-on Black Ghost, because it's... And I gave that one a like. It's just because they pull off the reveal of the ghost is really stupid. Interesting, not amazing, but interesting, and that follows with Ju-on White Ghost, which again, it's not bad, it's just, I don't know, they have their benefits, and I don't even remember much of what happens in Ju-on White Ghost. I don't think I'd ever watch Ju-on White Ghost again. Ju-on Black Ghost I will, because I would be willing to, because I was interested in the story and the characters, whereas Ju-on White Ghost, again, does have better scares, but the last, 10 minutes, I don't think I'd want to watch again, so... Following this is Ju-on the Curse 2, because half of it is recycled footage from the previous film, it's not amazing, but the second half is really quite creepy and nicely done, and has some interesting effects, and some interesting stuff they do with Kayako. What it means, I don't know, I think they just thought it would be cool, and that's how I like to interpret it, because it's a direct-to-DVD. They're not expecting much. They're just like, hey, this would be cool if we did this, and I agree, it was cool. Following that is the 444444444 and In a Corner, which I don't really give star ratings because they're short films. And again, they're student short films. They're not professionally done 30-minute short films. So now we talk about the American ones. You can skip this part of the video. They're all the same film. The Grudge from 2004 is directed by the exact same fucking guy as the rest of them, basically. Good old Takashi gets a much bigger budget, brings in a bunch of American actors, and you know what he does? Makes the same film. He wanted to make his own films first. And The Grudge, Jewel and the Grudge did really well, financially, that they did Jewel and the Grudge 2. And this is before he did the American one. He was like, I'm going to do the American one myself. You guys can fucking wait. Let me do my own films, then I can sell out and do the American ones. So, this one has Sarah Michelle Gellar. It's the exact same film as Jewel and the Grudge, except minor league differences. I did prefer it, though, to some degree. Again, I gave it 3.5 stars with a like. This is the one that no one really likes. A lot of people do not like the American films. I think this is the only American film that's worth watching, but there are reasons why I dislike it and reasons why I like it. Despite being a straight remake of Jewel and the Grudge gives us some nice variations, the stairwell for example, and rearranges the story whilst taking story beats and iconic moments from Jewel and the Curse, which allows for a nice separation from the Japanese originals, whilst also being a nicely unique film to itself. One where you can basically watch this and get the same experience compared to the Japanese equivalent. If this film doesn't scare you, that's on you, because I didn't get scared by the original Jewel and the Grudge. But this is where I really emphasize how they're all basically the same film. This one literally is just like, hey, what if we took the best parts of Jewel and the Curse and Jewel and the Grudge and put them onto one film? Again, basically just Jewel and the Grudge, but with some extra stuff sprinkled in from Jewel and the Curse. And I like that. It's a bit more higher budgeted, and there's some nice teasers. I prefer sometimes how they, each film has different things. All the things that are the same, sometimes I prefer how they did it in The Curse, or The Grudge, or Jewel and the Grudge. It juggles. It's a really weird situation where some things I think were better done than others. This film benefits from having better looking effects. Again, just the exact same shit from the previous film, but where the effects work comes in, this one does it a bit better. But there is also scenes where that falters. But maybe they thought it was probably worse looking to have a ghost grab a guy than to just have him walk away and not get killed. But then the girl in the stairwell was really cool, because that's an alternate scene to the Japanese one where she's in a bathroom and Kayako's in the bathroom stall next to her. And this time she's in a stairwell and the lights are going off from the top to the bottom, and Kayako is down below coming after her. And it's really creepy, and she still grabs her, but by like a lucky rabbit foot. So, yeah. But then her payoff scene, which is an iconic scene of her being in her bed and Kayako comes and grabs her, is probably better in its execution, but I prefer the Japanese version of it. But I prefer the American version of the stairwell, but I prefer her death in the bed in the Japanese version, because in the Japanese version, she watches the TV, and the TV goes all weird and starts distorting the reporter's face, and it's really creepy, much like the Ringu films, and then Kayako's in her bed and yanks her down and she dies. So, yeah, there are, again, things that are better done in some films compared to others. Unfortunately, this film asks you to root for a Karen. Her name is literally Karen. So it has its low points as well. It does have some Americanized jump scares that keep you awake, but I don't hate this version, and I honestly kind of prefer it to Jewel and the Grudge, but not Jewel and the Grudge 2 or Jewel and the Curse. MVP being Ted Raimi, of course, with a fun death scene, which is basically just, hey, you know that cool part where that girl has like half of her face missing in the Curse? Yeah, we're going to do that again in this one, except it's got a more... it's a different scenario. They're in two different locations. It's a different build-up, different payoff. Yeah, it's cool. I like it, though. I like it in both, realistically. I don't have much else to say about Jewel and the Grudge. About The Grudge. Fucking so many names. I liked it. Preferred it to the original The Grudge. How about that? But I liked Curse more, and I liked The Grudge 2 more. Simple as that. To the point where in my, out of 12 ranking, The Grudge sits as number 3, behind The Curse and Jewel and the Grudge 2. And it's just one above Jewel and the Grudge. How about that? Jewel and the Grudge 2, Jewel and the Curse, The Grudge, Jewel and the Grudge. And then you get Jewel and Black Ghost, Jewel and White Ghost, Jewel and the Curse 2, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, in a corner. And then you get the rest of them. Now, I'll be honest, the DVD set I got was actually pretty decent because it has a bunch of special features, including commentaries, but the 45-minute long behind the scenes making of the film for The Grudge was interesting. It has a lot of, oh, we're Americans in Japan. They do everything so differently here. Wow, how about that? I hated that part. It's so, oh my god, it's very annoying to watch. But there's also elements of they're like, oh, and it's so brilliant. The director just knows what he's doing. He has every shot set up, ready. Everything's detailed in storyboards. They just know what they're going to do, and we get it done, and we're done, and we're out of there. And some of the actors being like, I don't even get 5 or 6 takes. We're done in like 2 takes. And I'm like, shit, I hope I did a good enough job. And I'm sitting here like, did these people know that this is the 4th time he's made this movie? Sorry, the 5th time he's made this movie? He's made this movie so many times that I'm like, how do these people not realize that this is the reason why he knows what he's doing? Because he's done it so many times. And do you know what? Same production crew. They just given a bit more of a budget because it's American and they've got American actors. And that's probably where most of the budget went to outside of the special effects. So, yeah. Also, the featurette was awful when any of the Japanese people came up, including the director, because there were no subtitles. I don't know what the fuck they were saying, and it really annoyed me, because it had him, it had, I think, one of the producers and one of the actors, and I'm like, no, 2 of the actors. One of the detective was in it, and I don't even know what the hell any of them were saying. And I'm, what the fuck is the point? And the aspect ratio kept changing. It's 4:3, where sometimes they're in a little, and then it's out a little. And I'm like, did they just stretch it out when the subtitles were on screen so we couldn't read it? I don't know what the fuck's happening here. There's no subtitles on the disc either, so... I mean, for the film, yes, but not for the special features. I mean, probably for the commentary, but I don't think... I believe it only came with the commentary with all the American actors. There is a commentary with the Japanese director and the actors that has subtitles, but I don't think that's on the DVD. I'm pretty sure that's only on the Blu-ray. But yeah, all the rest of the special features are pretty good. I didn't listen to the commentary. I'm not going to listen to 17 goddamn American actors and producers and directors talk about a goddamn Japanese film. Not unless they're film scholars. Fuck off. So yes, I didn't mind The Grudge. I thought it was pretty good. It's another, again, it's a culmination of the best bits from 2 other films. So if you want to just watch that instead, go for it. But realistically, you could just watch Ju-on the Curse and Ju-on the Grudge, and you'd be fine. You know, you'd be set. You don't have to watch the American one. You don't have to watch any of the American ones. In fact, I would only recommend the first one because some people don't like reading subtitles. Which, ironically, this film has subtitles because they talk in Japanese. Holy shit, they're still in Japan. I'd love that, though. They're like, fuck you, bring the actors over to Japan. We're not going to America to film. Fuck that, it's expensive. Genius. Genius move. Get the same cast members for Kayako and Toshio. Oh, wonderful stuff. So I appreciate that. And then we get to the bad ones. These are the ones that are completely not worth watching. The Grudge 2, The Grudge 3, and The Grudge The Untold Chapter. Which I'm going to straight up tell you what my ranking is. The Grudge 2 comes next with 1.5 stars, followed by The Grudge 2019, according to Letterboxd, though it was released in January 2020. So it's technically called The Grudge 2020. The Grudge The Untold Chapter, as detailed on my Blu-ray, I put that next with 1.5 stars, so I gave them both 1.5 stars. Arguably, I could give The Grudge 2 stars. I just didn't want to. And then you get The Grudge 3, which I gave 1 star. That's my lowest ranked one. It's the waste of time, waste of money. Luckily, it was on a DVD set with the other 2 that I got for $19, and The Grudge The Untold Chapter I got for Christmas. It was $3 and I didn't have to buy it. I did that on purpose with rings as well. I got my girlfriend to buy like 4 films for me that were like $18, and 2 of them were these 2 Grudge films. I don't even remember what the other 2 were. I don't remember at all. Yeah. Not good films. I mean, they're not bad. The Grudge 3 is the only one that's awful. The other 2 are like, they're bad, but they're watchable. So let's talk about The Grudge 2. The last film directed by Takashi Shimizu. Again, low ranking, 1.5 stars. Outside of the creatively subversive death of Miyuki, the rest of this long sequel is a bore. Miyuki is a Japanese girl who's dating a guy who looks like he's in his mid to late 20s. He's a white dude. The kind of modern Australian tradie date in high school deal, except probably not as creepy. Still kind of. And so she's in a hotel room with him in a bit of a romantic suite. And in the mirror you can see the shower where he's shirtless and taking a shower. And something's in her bed, because she's in the bed. And they haven't even slept with each other yet. And she thinks it's him. But then she looks up and realizes, no, he's still in the shower. So of course you're like, oh, okay, so she's going to get dragged down into the bed. But that's not what happens. She gets herself, I don't think she gets herself out of the sheets, but she backs up to the mirror, but it's showing you the mirror, and it looks like it's her in the mirror, but something's a bit off about it. And I immediately realize, that's Kayako. That's Kayako in the mirror. They're pulling a mirror twist. And they do. Kayako grabs her from behind and pulls her into the mirror, and she's gone. That's the only good scene in the whole fucking movie. It's a bit tense. It's quite tense. Not as overly scary, because again, she could have opened the sheets and been scared by Kayako. But instead she just gets dragged into the mirror. And that's it. The guy finishes his shower, looks for her. She's not there, but her clothes are still there. That's it. We only get one more mention of her when the main character from the school is told, oh yeah, she went missing. Her boyfriend was looking for her. She's gone. She's fucking dead. This one does have an Australian actress though, Teresa Palmer. Outside of the subversive death of Miyuki, the rest of this long sequel is a bore. Just more repeated stuff from previous Japanese films without adding anything new. No, being half set in Chicago does not count as new, nor does the pointless expansion of Kayako's backstory, which is new, but we'll get into that. And it just boils down to being a pointless retread rather than what could have been an interesting expansion had it gone down the Ju-on the Curse 2 route. And by that I mean the school scene. They could have been like, you know what? We've done Ju-on the Grudge 2, let's do Ju-on the Curse 2 in the second half of that. And not exactly about the people selling homes and whatever, but the whole thing that happened to the kid in the school. They could have done that kind of route where it gets really fucked up. But they didn't. The director was like, yeah, no, I really wanted to look into Kayako's backstory. What if her mum was taking the evil out of people and fed it to her? And that's what made her evil? But not really. She just became even one of the characters is that's not even what made her evil. She only became evil because her husband killed her. She just happened to be fed a bunch of evil spirits. It's just what's happening? Is she evil because of the evil stuff, or is she evil because she was murdered? What the fuck is happening? So, yeah, it's not very interesting, and the character we follow through it is very, very boring. And then we go to Chicago, where there's this whole thing where there's this kid who's, because there's Sarah Michelle Gellar comes back for 2 scenes where they Halloween Resurrection her and they kill her off. It's an interesting death, but you get a sister and you get a schoolgirl. The sister discovers the backstory, which is the boring part, and I think she still dies anyway. I don't remember. I really don't. I've blanked out on most of the ending of this film, but I do know because once her part is done, you cut to Chicago, where you've had how I mentioned Kayako or whatever with the Teresa Palmer. Also, yeah, they all speak fucking English, even in Japan. So they have a friend who's new, and they kind of tease her a little, but then they lock her in. That's what happens to the sister. I remember now. They locked this schoolgirl in the house, but they didn't really lock her. They put her in a closet, which is in the other side of the house, the top end of the house, to where in the previous films where Kayako was dead. So they just did that for difference, I guess. I don't fucking know. Either way, she gets scared by Kayako. She sees Toshio, and then she gets scared by Kayako, but then she gets out. And she ends up getting to Chicago, but Kayako is not what's coming after her. I mean, it's the same story as what happens in Ju-on the Curse 2, where you've got a schoolgirl who's been haunted by the ghosts of other girls. Was that even that film, or was that The Grudge 2? That was The Grudge 2. Due on The Grudge 2. So, no, that was Due on The Grudge. They didn't even put that in the Grudge film. They had that in Due on The Grudge with the schoolgirl who goes into the house with her friends, and her friends die, and she gets haunted by her friends. And then one of those friends is in the next film, and she gets haunted by the fact that her previous friend had died and went into the house. So, a lot of elongated bullshit. But either way, in this version, she's in the house, sees Kayako, runs away, her two friends get killed by Kayako. She doesn't. She goes to America. She brings the curse back with her. You don't know that because you get a hooded person, with her family, and her family fucking vanished. You don't know what the hell happens to them. But her whole room is all padded up and whatever with newspaper on the windows to stop the ghosts from coming in. The house next door, because it's an apartment, the apartment next door gets cursed. They all go crazy, kill each other, whatever the crap. Unnecessary, boring, whatever. It's revealed at the end that it was the schoolgirl the whole time that was there. That was their neighbor. That's the reason why it's cursed. I'm only telling you this because it's unnecessary and you don't need to watch this film. And so, she dies by getting yanked into her jumper because Kayako's behind her in her jumper. But it's not Kayako. The reveal is that Kayako's not in the film anymore. It's actually, Kayako's been replaced because Kayako's gone. She gets, her spirit gets, released or whatever by the Sarah Michelle Gellar's character's sister, who was only revealed in this film, because she's the main character. She becomes the new ghost. So, the ghost that this schoolgirl saw was actually her ghost, not Kayako. They do a retcon. And so, she gets killed by that ghost, and then the ghost comes out of the jumper and goes after the kid, and that's the end of the film. But you know what happens in the next film? It all gets retconned again. In The Grudge 3, that all gets retconned because it starts with the kid who gets killed by Kayako, and it turns out it was Kayako the whole time. And Toshio's still there, played by a different actor. He's a bit weird. Oh, it's still set in the apartment building because they're not going back to Japan anymore. And then Kayako has a sister, and the sister goes to America because she's like, the curse is still spreading, I have to stop it. And she gets herself killed, but not by Kayako, by the husband, the brother who owns the apartment building, who gets possessed by the spirit, the ghost of the husband of Kayako. So he goes on a murderous rampage, killing a bunch of people, including her, which doesn't make any fucking sense as to why that happens at all. Yeah, this one was the direct-to-DVD one, and it is really bad. In almost every single jump scare, they almost have a really great sequence in where a guy goes into a house, but the scare happens so quickly, within 2 seconds, that there's no effect, and you're just like, what the fuck just happened? There's no oh my god, there's no lasting effect, it's gone. So the third film sucks. I gave it, 1 star? Yeah. Then we get to The Grudge, the Untold chapter, which is set in 2004 and 2006, and is the exact same film as the rest of these, except it's just set in a different house in America. A girl who's a real estate agent or whatever, that's a real estate agent, is in Japan, goes into the house, comes back out, gets spooked by Kayako, comes back to America, and kills her husband and daughter and herself. Which is weird, because that's not what Kayako does. Kayako kills them. She doesn't possess people. Except for in the Curse film, where she possesses people. She never does in the actual Curse, in the actual Due on the Grudge films. She never possesses a single fucking person. It's weird. I mean, technically the pregnant woman, but that's not really. Not really at all. So, the Untold chapter, again, not a very good film. It tries to do this thing where it's so this girl had come back from Japan, she'd killed her husband and daughter, and the detectives went and investigated it, but one of the detectives, who's still a detective now, 2006, didn't go in to investigate, because his partner did, and his partner went insane, and is now in an insane asylum, and then ends up... He doesn't even die in the end. He tries to shoot himself, goes into an insane asylum, whatever, and then he gets his eyes gouged out. I don't know if he does that to himself or Kayako does it, which it wouldn't make sense for Kayako to fucking do it because he can still see her even though he's in this place, which doesn't make much sense. She would have killed him by now. You know, it's been 2 years. So, yeah. Well, it hadn't been 2 years. It had been a year. Because there's the event that happens there. He goes insane, but he keeps going back to the house. But new people have, an older couple have now moved into the house, and he keeps showing up there. And now there's this woman the couple there, you got a black guy and the white woman. The white woman's from like all the Insidious films, and she's like seeing the ghosts of the girl but not the mother, because there's no Kayako in this one. This time, the grudge is the woman killing her husband and her daughter and herself becomes itself a grudge, a Ju-on, which doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, she came back from Japan and was haunted by Kayako, but there's no Kayako, there's no Toshio, there's nothing. It's just this little white girl and this woman, and they're the ghosts. There. Kayako's not even in this one. Like, even all the ads, like this person here is not Kayako. It's so weird. It doesn't make any sense to me as to why it isn't Kayako. Like, that was the whole point of the Grudge films, is that it's Kayako, but this time it's like, no. But why? She doesn't... It's not the husband that becomes the cursed one, you know? It's her. She's still the ghost, which doesn't make any sense because she's the one who kills the girl, her daughter, and her husband. Why? Because she's been haunted by Kayako? I don't fucking know. They don't elaborate. Apparently there's like 30 minutes of deleted scenes, which I am not fucking watching. I mean, it started auto-playing one of the featurettes, and they're like, oh, this director, he's so good at what he does. I'm like, I'm sorry, did you guys watch the same film as me? This was terrible. Even if he's done better films beforehand, this is not one of those. So, yeah. Those two people in the house also end up dying. I mean, kind of. The woman who goes to help them ends up running away because spooky ghosts. She crashes and dies because she sees a ghost. That's what kicks off Reisenberg's story. There were like so many goddamn stories in this. It's not important. It doesn't fucking matter. None of it's interesting. None of it's compelling. John Cho is in it, and I don't fucking know why. He has his whole story about, oh yeah, he's the real estate guy. He's trying to sell the house, but then he ends up getting killed and then showing up at his own house and kills his pregnant wife. I think, basically, they don't really dive into that one as much. That's like, oh, it's one of the consequences of this cursed house. It's like, why are people still moving into this house if it's cursed? And of course, Reisenberg goes into the house, sees the older woman who I guess was still alive. I'm pretty sure she's dead too, and she's like just a ghost version of herself. So this is like, what's that? American Horror Story? It's like the third season of that, I guess, all over again. But as a movie, that's bad. And, yeah, then she gets haunted by the ghosts, and she burns down the house, and then the ghost still kills her in the end. Doesn't matter. It's so stupid. Yeah. The main gist I can say as an overall, as a summary, these films are okay. My suggestion, the Japanese ones. My suggestion, both of the Curse films, watch the supercut on YouTube. The Grudge one, sure, why not, and the Grudge 2. Doesn't hurt. Basically, those are the only ones you really need to watch. You can watch Black Ghost and White Ghost if you want to. You can do whatever the hell you want. I wouldn't recommend them. I mean, I'd probably recommend Black Ghost, but not really White Ghost. I would only recommend the first American film if you are at all interested, or if you don't want to watch the Japanese versions and you want to get the idea, you can watch the American Grudge film. I would not suggest watching any more of the American films. Yeah, that's basically it. I have yet to see the beginning of the end, or the final curse, or Kayako vs. Sadako. I really want to watch Kayako vs. Sadako. I do not want to watch the other two Grudge films, because I'm like, I don't care. But they're not even well reviewed anyway, so it's like, I'm tired of them, alright? Once you see the idea once, the rest of it's basically the same. if I had like I watched Curse 1 because it's the first one that was released as a film. I was going to start with The Grudge, which probably would have scared me more than The Curse. Probably, you know, I probably could have been scared more by the Grudge, or by Ju-on the Grudge or The Grudge had I watched them first, but I didn't. If I actually had gone with my backwards idea, which I was going to do, of watching The Grudge, the Untold chapter, and then watching the rest and being like, would I actually, get the idea? Would it ruin it for me? I think so, but not really. Because The Grudge, the Untold chapter, doesn't completely dive into what the actual other films are, but if I was to watch The Grudge 3, then maybe it'd be confusing as hell. Maybe. But it's also because I thought the Untold chapter was a remake, a reboot. It is not. It's technically a reboot, but it's just a sequel. Spin-off sequel. There isn't an overabundance of stuff I can say in terms of a lot of praise. The films are fine. They're pretty scary, but again, once you get the idea the first time around, unless you actually get scared by the rest of them, that's why I like The Grudge too, because it still had some great scares to it, but it had some fresh ideas, and it had someone for me to connect to. So when I have a main character to focus on, even if we're still getting intercut with other people, I don't mind that. I like it. It works well. That's why I like The Grudge too. If I'm going to rewatch any of these, I'd probably rewatch The Curse 1, maybe as a supercut, probably not, and The Grudge 2. That's about it. If I was to show my partner, I would probably just show her the Grudge, Ju-on the Grudge and Ju-on the Grudge 2, and leave it at that. I probably wouldn't show her the American ones unless she really wanted to watch them, but why? Watch the exact same thing you've already seen before. Again, at least the Grudge, Ju-on the Grudge 1 and Ju-on the Grudge 2 are different. Even Ju-on the Curse, but Ju-on the Curse is basically just a lesser version, I guess, cheaper version. And anyway, that's all. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Grudge films, the Ju-on the Grudge films, maybe it's a calm and relaxed talk. I don't know. I usually do those. Maybe it is. Who cares? Either way, yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.